Hello, and welcome to our new Bible study series, looking at the life of Elisha and taking some cues from his stories to look at New Testament stories. And today, we can't escape the fact that Elisha's life and service as a prophet is closely linked to Elijah. Elijah was the principal prophet in the land at the time Elisha was growing up. Elijah had become the last prophet free to speak and act, speaking God's purposes and judgment on the nation that had followed false gods and had also given in to the kingship of Ahab and his equally wicked wife Jezebel. We're going to look at the story today and see one that is familiar, a story that we often stop reading at the moment when I think it just gets interesting. Elijah has proven that our God is greater than the God that Ahab says the nation should follow. In a great miraculous event, which you can read in 1 Kings chapters 17 and 18 to follow through, you'll see that Ahab, on his return to the palace, is quizzed by his wife Jezebel, and Jezebel swears to hunt Elijah and kill him. Elijah hears this and flees. He disappears, heading off to the wilderness to hide from Ahab and Jezebel's forces. He is fed up, exhausted, and depressed. He stops somewhere safe for his servant to hide and carries on. In the wilderness, he is strengthened by an angel. The angel's miracle gives him food and water and allows him to then run, miraculously run it does seem, to Mount Horeb, far, he hopes, from the hand of the evil king of Israel. In Mount Horeb, he takes shelter in a cave. And then, well, you know the story. There's an earthquake, but God wasn't in it. There's a wind rushing and roaring past the cave mouth. God wasn't in it. A fire took hold of the land around the cave. God wasn't in it. Then there was a whisper. And at the moment of whisper, Elijah covers his face and goes to the mouth of the cave to speak to God. For he has heard the message, the Lord is about to pass by. There, he speaks with God. He pours out the anguish of all that is happening, his fear that his service to God will come to nothing if he is killed, come to nothing for his own sake, and come to nothing for God's sake. He looks for sympathy, or perhaps reassurance, perhaps new purpose and the promise of protection, but actually there's not a word of sympathy. Instead, we have to recognize that Elijah meets his Gethsemane. He pours out the anguish and discovers that what can replace that is purpose. He is told by God, go back the way you came. And he's given a to-do list. He is to anoint 3 people. He is to anoint Hazael, Jehu, and his successor, Elisha. He is given, after that, the reassurance that God will not allow his followers to be annihilated. He will reserve at least 7,000 who will stay faithful and become a remnant from which new spiritual life can grow. So Elijah finds there is something to do to replace the sense of what can I do that has spoiled his trust in God's purposes. And we don't know just what he did with Hazael and Jehu, but we do know that he went and found Elisha and discovered him one of 12 pairs of oxen with a plough being pulled behind it, and Elisha is one of those guiding the furrows in a field. What does Elijah say to Elisha? If you've read the story, you'll know he says nothing. He puts his cloak round him. That's all. And then Elisha understands that this is his moment. There is succession happening here. Elijah is choosing Elisha as a disciple who will one day be able to carry on the work that needs done. Elisha wants to put things right with his family. He wants to go and say farewell. And Elijah simply tells him, "What's that to me?" So Elisha does just that. But then, what you and I might say is a moment when he burns his bridges. He takes apart the plough, which is mostly timber, and uses it to burn a sacrifice, dedicating the future of his life to God's purposes and not to farm work. I hope there might be a bell ringing in the back of your head. What story? What did Jesus say about ploughing? What did he say about those who make excuses? You might not know the chapter and verse before I show it on this next slide. In Luke's Gospel, as they were walking along the road, a man said to Jesus, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." He said to another man, "Follow me." But he replied, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Still another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family." Jesus replied, "No one who puts a hand to the plough and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." Now that sounds like a Sunday morning kind of passage. Jesus gives these tiny parables of meaning from farm workers, and we can just about get it. The picture on the slide of the lines curving through a field make you wonder about whether or not that tractor's doing a good job. But who are you and I to question that? I've never so much as done more than turn over a vegetable plot in my garden. So we might wonder, does Jesus really mean it? That we can't ever look back? That if we do, we're not fit to be a disciple? Or is this exaggeration? By pushing the idea so far that it's ridiculous, then we know we can begin to match the request, that we don't look back, that we understand our best work will be done looking ahead to Jesus and not looking back to where we've been. If we can do that, then we're doing God's work. Consider those whom you may have met, as I have with those I've met who attend AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous. Those that I have met don't describe themselves as fixed, cured from alcoholism. They speak of themselves as continuing to be recovering alcoholics who need to work every day at not giving in to the desire to start drinking again. This gives us the shape of the demand on us. We might wish for the medal at the end of our days that says, uninterrupted, always looking forward. But we know that we're not like that. That we will make mistakes. We will get lazy and fed up, diverted or distracted, lazy, and in fits and bursts demonstrate utter conviction of our Christian faith. What we must do is learn that when our eyes have been looking elsewhere, get them back on track, get them looking ahead. And how and what do we learn from this? What we learn is that God welcomes us back, but also that we can start again. This story of Jesus talking about the plough is our parallel gospel story. Elisha gave up home and farm and family to serve Elijah. He would do nothing more than watch and listen, make dinner, put up the shelter. When necessary, for ritual cleanliness, hold the water jug that Elijah could wash his hands, and pray, clean on the outside representing clean on the inside. You and I are to similarly become the servants of our God, that we might do what he needs done. For discipleship means turning our heads towards the job in hand, and finding Jesus is just a few steps in front of us. And we have to do this every day. Make sure and read the story of Elisha's call in the Bible, 1 Kings chapter 19. And we'll tell another story next week. Thank you for watching, listening, and I hope discovering how to be a better disciple. Many blessings.